You've been grinding for weeks, your lifts have stopped moving, your joints ache a little more than usual, and honestly, the thought of going to the gym today feels heavier than the bar does. The instinct is to push harder. The actual fix is usually the opposite: a deload week, a planned, deliberate week of reduced training that lets your body catch up on the recovery your progress depends on. Let's start with what a deload week actually is. It's a planned period, usually 1 week, where you deliberately reduce your training volume, intensity, or both, instead of training at your normal hard effort. It is not the same as taking a week completely off. You're still training, still moving through your usual exercises, just with meaningfully less total stress placed on your body. Why would deliberately training less help you get stronger? Hard training doesn't make you stronger directly. It creates a stimulus, fatigue, and micro damage that your body then adapts to during recovery. If you never give your body a real chance to catch up on that recovery, the fatigue keeps accumulating faster than your body can repair it, and your performance eventually stalls even though you're still training hard. A deload clears out that accumulated fatigue so your next block of hard training can actually produce progress again. Here are the real signs you need one: strength that's stalled or dropping for 2 or 3 weeks despite consistent training and effort, persistent fatigue that doesn't respond to a good night's sleep, joints that ache more than usual, especially shoulders, elbows, or knees, training that feels heavy before you even start, a dumbbell that felt light 2 weeks ago suddenly feeling like real effort, and an elevated resting heart rate or disrupted sleep. If two or more of these apply to you right now, that's a strong signal to schedule a deload in the next week or two. So how often should you deload? For most lifters, training with real intensity, roughly every 4 to 8 weeks, works well. Lifters who regularly push sets close to failure or use higher training volumes tend to need one closer to every 4 to 6 weeks. More moderate training can often stretch to 8 weeks or beyond. Beginners often don't need scheduled deloads as frequently, since they haven't built up the capacity to generate enough fatigue to require one. More advanced lifters, training with heavier absolute loads, tend to accumulate fatigue faster. Now, let's talk about how to actually program one. There are two main approaches. Reduce the weight. Drop your working weights by roughly 40 to 60% while keeping your usual rep ranges, or reduce the volume. Keep your weights closer to normal, but cut your total sets by about a third to a half, and stop every set several reps short of failure. A practical combined approach that works well for most lifters. Cut your sets by about 40%, reduce your working weight by about 40%, and stay well clear of failure on every set throughout. Here's the concern that stops a lot of lifters from ever taking one, and it's largely unfounded. A single week of reduced training does not cause meaningful loss of muscle or strength. Detraining generally takes several consecutive weeks of doing little to nothing before it becomes noticeable, and a deload keeps you training the whole time, just at reduced intensity. If anything, most lifters come out of a well-timed deload lifting slightly heavier than before it, since the accumulated fatigue that was masking their true strength has finally cleared. There's a psychological side worth mentioning too. Constant hard training creates a kind of low-grade grind that builds up alongside the physical fatigue. A deload week, precisely because it's lighter, often restores enthusiasm for training that had quietly been eroding for weeks. Many lifters resist deloading because it feels like giving something up or admitting weakness. That mindset is exactly backward. Elite athletes across essentially every strength sport treat planned recovery as a core part of the training process, not an exception to it. Who benefits most from scheduled deloads? Intermediate and advanced lifters training with real intensity and meaningful weekly volume are the group that benefits most consistently. Anyone chasing a specific strength goal benefits from deloading in the weeks leading into a peak or a max attempt. Lifters juggling significant life stress often need more frequent deloads than their training alone would suggest, since non-training stress draws from the same recovery capacity. Let's walk through what a deload week actually looks like day to day. Same exercises as your normal split, but working sets drop to roughly half your usual number, and weight comes down by about 40%. Every set stops several reps short of what you could actually do. If your knees or lower back have been the source of nagging discomfort, lean further toward reducing weight specifically on those lifts. Rest days stay the same. And by the end of the week, most lifters report their joints already feeling less cranky and their sleep starting to normalize. It's worth being clear about a distinction that trips a lot of people up. A deload week is not the same thing as a week completely off from training. A full rest week makes sense for recovering from illness, injury, or genuinely severe burnout. A deload keeps you moving through your normal exercises at reduced intensity specifically because staying in the movement pattern matters. It maintains motor patterns and keeps connective tissue accustomed to load, just less of it. Thinking about deloads only as a reactive fix misses their bigger value. Many structured training programs build a deload directly into the plan every 4 to 6 weeks as a default, rather than waiting for signs of fatigue to appear. This is sometimes called block periodization, several weeks of progressively increasing training stress, followed by a planned deload, followed by the next block starting from a position of full recovery. A few mistakes are worth watching for. Waiting too long to take one. Pushing through the early warning signs usually just extends how long the eventual recovery takes. Cutting intensity so much it stops feeling like training at all. Skipping deloads entirely because progress feels too good to interrupt. One of the most common ways lifters accidentally work their way into overtraining. And treating a deload as an excuse to eat poorly or ignore sleep when nutrition and sleep matter just as much during a deload as during your hardest training block. Let's also cover a quick reference for the two main approaches. A volume-focused deload means fewer sets at similar weight and works well when general fatigue has piled up. An intensity-focused deload means lighter weight at similar sets and works well when it's really your joints or tendons that are barking at you. Most lifters do best combining both, some reduction in sets and some reduction in weight, rather than going all in on just one lever. It's worth being patient with the process too. Detraining, the real loss of muscle and strength from inactivity, takes meaningfully longer to show up than most people assume. Generally, several consecutive weeks of doing next to nothing. One lighter week inside an otherwise consistent training routine is nowhere close to that threshold, so there's no reason to fear a single deload wrecking months of progress. Exercise selection during a deload matters less than people think, but a couple of practical notes help. Keep the same general movement patterns you normally train, squats, presses, rows, pulls, rather than switching to a completely different routine for the week. This keeps your technique sharp and your nervous system familiar with the patterns, so when you return to full intensity the following week, you're not relearning anything. You're just adding load back onto movements you never really stopped doing. One more distinction worth understanding: proactive versus reactive deloading. Reactive deloading means waiting until the warning signs, stalled lifts, nagging joints, poor sleep, show up before taking action. It works, but it means you've already lost some training quality in the weeks leading up to it. Proactive deloading means scheduling a deload into your plan every several weeks by default, regardless of how you're feeling in the moment. This prevents fatigue from ever accumulating to a point where it meaningfully limits your training in the first place, and it's the approach most structured, long-term programs are built around. A deload week is not a sign of weakness or a wasted week. It's a deliberate tool that keeps accumulated fatigue from turning into a stalled plateau or a genuine case of overtraining. Schedule one roughly every 4 to 8 weeks based on how hard you train, or pull it forward the moment 2 or more warning signs show up. Cut your volume, weight, or both by around 40% for a week. Keep sleep and nutrition dialed in, and trust that the short-term dip in training stress is exactly what sets up your next block of real progress. Full breakdown, with a complete sample week and how to tell a deload apart from a full rest week, is linked below.